Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 570.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other CashFlow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the CashFlow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because we are going to talk about many different things, but most importantly, something that I believe a number of you are, well, not only curious about, but maybe you're in the process of doing it. I know some of you today, you woke up, you said, you know what, I'm going to get my business started. Others of you, you've been going for a while. Maybe you've done the, 6 and 7 figures, and now you're trying to figure out, how do I get to that next level? And what you're thinking is, man, if I just could figure out a way to raise a little bit more capital, if I could just figure out a way to get in front of another investor, if I could just figure out how to get my idea off the ground and leveraging the resources of other individuals, I would get there. Well, I have with me today none other than Ryan Vett. And what's interesting about Ryan, yes, he's an investor, yes, he's an entrepreneur, but not only are we talking interesting things like a TV show and how that can play into things, we're also going to be talking about the capacity, the ability for all of us as entrepreneurs to go out there, leverage very unique and creative ideas. Some of you may have heard of a company by the name of Boon. And as Ryan describes it, it's Uber meets eHarmony meets healthcare staffing, which by definition means we got a lot of questions to figure out. But it also means that we're going to be able to learn a lot. So let's make sure that we get ready to listen, love, and learn from Ryan Vett. Ryan, how you doing?
Doing well, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Uber meets eHarmony meets healthcare staffing. You do realize that in and of itself requires tons of questions, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's not like we're a car dating service, like you get in a car if you're healthcare staffing. I had someone come up to me and say, so you're doing dating inside ride sharing? And not quite. That's not exactly what we're doing here.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So I'm eager to go down this path and understand and unveil it. But before we get too far, I have to ask you the same question that we tend to ask everybody else. But because this is the first time you're here. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes, like Batman, Robin, Wonder Woman, etc. Because I think entrepreneurs and superheroes have a ton of things in common. For example, as an entrepreneur, I can envision myself flying around town, using our products and services, and saving our customers one sale at a time. Also, though, like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. There was a time where Spider-Man was just a kid going to school, doing his thing, taking some photos, then one day gets bit by a spider, discovers he's got a superhuman ability, and now he has to choose whether to use it for good or evil. So my question to you is rather simple. Before Boon, before your podcast, before everything that people know you for today, before the VC entrepreneur community even knew your name, what we want to know is, who is Ryan Vett?
That's a great question. I love it. I thought you were going to ask me about, what superhero I was. I'm not worthy of that. So I'm thinking here, you're making me sweat.
Much easier.
That is much easier, but it's also complicated. I would say I am someone that has always loved creating. I think at the core of what my career has been kind of plagued by, I have been a creator. And it started from probably the ripe age of 3, when Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat was on Broadway, and learning all those songs and putting on plays for everyone that came into our house, to wanting to start a band at age like 5, because I had been taking piano lessons and could barely play Lightly Row or Mary Had a Little Lamb, but I was determined. Or when I had a guinea pig and some turtles, I started a petting zoo and tried to charge admission in my front yard. I was probably like 8 or 9 at that point. So I've always been a creator, whether that's literal creativity from something musical or artistic or something like that, to a business. And so my real first business well, I don't know if you can call it a real business, but it was a lemonade stand. And I know a lot of entrepreneurs have that story, but I did learn how to diversify my products, add new products, and keep people captive, do marketing. I lived in Chicago at the time, and called one of the leading newspapers there, trying to place a full color back page ad. It was a little outside of my lemonade stand's budget, mind you, but I tried. And that was all before, I was 10. And so I've always loved creating and inventing and making the world a little bit better place. And so that's who I am and where I come from.
Now, I can say, out of the many hundreds of entrepreneurs that I have asked that question, you are the first to try to charge admission for a petting zoo in your front lawn. That is for sure. I would have loved to have been there to see what that looked like. But you said diversify your product offering at a lemonade stand? Please explain. I'm curious. That's also curious as well.
Yeah, so I'll combine it with the petting zoo. Actually, I figured that if I had a lemonade stand and I could keep people there longer, then they would buy more. So that was my first strategy. So the petting zoo was one. I had a wiener dog at the time. Her name was Penny, and because she was kind of that penny copper color, and so I put her on a leash, threw my guinea pig and 2 turtles into like a little chicken wire fence outside, and tried to charge admission. I don't think I successfully charged admission. That detail's fuzzy. But what I did do was try to get people longer at the lemonade stand, and I ultimately realized that if I gave car washes or bike washes, that was a bit more sophisticated, and people had to sit there for a little while. And that's how I was able to get the captive audience from the lemonade stand. But the diversification is, most people don't like that nasty lemonade that sits outside all day. It's not really actually sun-baked lemonade like you can pay a lot of money for. It's sun-spoiled lemonade that came from a mix that's probably got more scientific words in it than it does actual natural products. So anyway, that I quickly figured out that I could sell candy bars, because I saw people going door to door for Boy Scouts or whatever, selling candy bars. And I also sold Kool-Aid, so I had multiple flavors, and we'd mix the flavors. And I also had ices, and ices were one of the bigger hits. I got a little snow cone or a little icy machine, and you'd freeze like this special ice cube, and you'd put it in top, and it would shave the ice down, and you could pour syrup on it. So that's how I diversified the products. And somewhere in there between my petting zoo and the product diversification, I created a line of trading cards called Pet Galaxy that I was determined to run Pokemon out of business with. We had packages that would hang up. I mean, I tried to sell them to Target. Target didn't buy them, but I tried. I was like 11 maybe at this point, and we ended up having 150 different cards with probably like 4,000 in circulation. And I know for a fact they were in 3 different states from people I'd traded with over time. I don't think I made any money off that, and any money I did make was probably owed back to my parents for using all their colored printer ink and printer paper. But that's beside the point. So that was how I diversified.
Yeah, okay. I like it. I like where this is going. So I'm curious to hear, though, how do we go from there to, again, Uber meets eHarmony meets healthcare staffing? I must hear this journey, because I'm assuming you didn't wake up one day and just go, oh, okay, I know. This is what it is.
That's my superpower. I just wake up. No, just kidding. No, it was definitely it was a long journey. It was definitely a long journey. And it's several startups between then and now, some successful, some not. But the most clear pathway I'll give you quickly was, I mentioned a moment ago, I called one of the leading newspapers in Chicago for a back page ad. Like most entrepreneurs, if you get rejected or something seems impossible, you just do it yourself. And so I created a neighborhood newspaper And I was probably 13-ish at this point in time, 12 or 13. And I think it lasted maybe 2 issues, and it went to like 5 houses using more of my parents' printer ink and paper. But nonetheless, I created it so I could advertise my lemonade stand and my Pet Galaxy cards. And it was through that, even though that's a kind of a comical story, that some local businesses actually realized I had some ability, and I use that word loosely, but ability to do graphic design and website design. This was before anyone could just go on GoDaddy and do a quick website. WordPress barely existed. And these things weren't easy to do. You couldn't go to Wix, or you had to have someone that could write code. And no one had Photoshop either. Photoshop was for the really, really, universities that taught design, or these, schools or big corporations, because it costs tens of thousands of dollars. Maybe it wasn't that much, but it felt like that much. And most people couldn't do that. Well, I had an aunt that worked for Adobe and hooked me up in the early days. And so I learned Photoshop. And between those two things, I launched my first business, my big boy business, I would call it. And that we ended up serving 200 clients in 25 different countries, specifically on nonprofit fundraising, and really working on helping them with hospitals overseas, or schools, or leadership academies, or fill in the blank overseas, to really, help these causes, and some domestically as well in the United States. And that business led me into software. I to this day can't write a line of code, but I'm able to find people and surround myself around people who are far smarter than I am to make that happen. And so so that was my first business, the marketing company, my first startup. And I think there's a difference, maybe just because of the year it was founded and startups were more popular. But it was out of a dorm room. But my first startup was a software company that I co-founded with a buddy, and it just ended up being super successful and profitable really quickly, and then kind of crashed and burned towards the end after a series of unfortunate events, which is totally fine. But we never lost money on it, so that's good. We always profited on it. And from there, I got the software bug. So I did several various startups. Some I founded, others I was a part of, and was able to be an executive at. And one of those was in the medical and dental space. And as I learned more about the medical and dental space, my wife at the same time was in dental school to become a dentist. So I started learning more about dentistry, and started building my platform and writing for some dental magazines, and speaking across the country on at dental conferences on patient experience, which is a topic that I'd done previously called customer experience. You just sub out customer for patient, and practice growth, so marketing, and just different things like that, and really saw this common thread and this common need for staffing. Staffing is a problem no matter what industry you're in, hiring and finding the right people. And so that's what I started to see in dentistry. So about a year and a half ago, I said, hey, there's a huge need to find good temporary team members to go and work a shift at a dental practice, a veterinarian office, an orthodontist, orthopedic, eye doctor, urgent care, ambulatory care, whatever it might be. And so I started researching, because I figured someone had surely figured this out. And as I was researching, I realized that the industry size of healthcare staffing, excluding medical doctors, so without medical doctors, who are arguably the most highly paid in the industry, without them, the industry was 16 times larger than Uber and Lyft combined, just in the U.S. And I said, wow, that's a huge opportunity. And so as I was looking, people were digitizing the space, but they weren't innovating. They were simply taking traditional processes and putting it in the cloud. And I said, no, there's so much opportunity, because one of the big issues is matching. It's hard to find the right provider for the right practice at the right time and at the right price. And right now, there's agencies that do it, that are charging a practice double and paying a provider less than fair wage. And I was like, that's not right. These are people who are, have spent their career trying to care for others, and now they're getting ripped off by either being charged too much, or not paid enough, or not access to benefits, and they're not being matched well. So they have bad experiences. So the Uber part is the on-demand matching. Now we've created it so if a hospital needs an extra nurse for a shift, they can click with the click of a button, and the best nurse will be sent to them within an hour approximately. The eHarmony component is personality and skill set matching, because a lot of traditional agencies just plug the hole with the next warm body that they have, and they might not be the best fit personality-wise, or skill set-wise, or background-wise, or you name it. We have a number of factors that we look at personality-wise, and make sure that we put the best fit in at the best time. And then pricing is the other component in healthcare staffing. So instead of charging almost double per hour, a normal hourly rate like many agencies do, we only charge about 1.2 times, so significantly less. But we also pay the providers more simultaneously because technology is doing all the work to make these matches so good. And so we're able to provide better patient care by lowering the overhead of a practice and increasing the payments of the provider. So it's a win-win-win.
Like it. Now, through the process, there's a couple of things that you said just now that I want to make sure that everyone catches. Because if I heard you correctly, you said, and I quote, that when you heard no, like most entrepreneurs, you interpreted that as do it yourself.
Right.
I like that. Where did that come from? How did you learn that to interpret what a lot of people right now would say, who are listening, who would say that, well, I've heard no and that I made a different decision?
Yeah, I don't know, to be quite honest. I think it was something I was born with. I think it's a sort of drive and passion that I've had to get things done. I think the other component of it is my parents definitely spurred that on in me. If I wanted something, they would rarely, if ever, tell me no, unless it was going to be harmful to me, obviously. But they rarely, if ever, told me no, but they rarely got me things as well. I mean, I'm not saying that they got me essentials and all of that, but
and a whole bunch of printer ink, apparently.
And printer ink, yeah. So they did support me secretly. But the thing that comes to mind in particular, there's two. One was a PlayStation, one was a bike. Like I had an awesome bike, but I wanted a more fancy bike because I was really into biking. And the PlayStation was something that I don't know why I wanted because I almost always played outside and I've never enjoyed video games. But I thought it was cool because that's what the cool kids had at my school. And so both of those purchases at some point, in late elementary school through early high school were purchases that I made because my parents didn't tell me no, but they said, hey, we'll help you buy it. Just, earn some money towards it. And either they would match it or give me a discount. They'd help me out.
Yeah, no, I totally get that.
And so I think that's really where that came from.
Got it. Okay. I like it. I like that interpretation of it. I think more products would come to market, more things would happen if just more of us interpreted what we hear as no as either not yet or do it yourself. You're like, okay, cool. I'll go figure it out on my own. I like that. Now, and then you mentioned you got the software bug. What is this bug? How does one get it? Is there a cure? Help me understand.
Yeah, I think it was just the software startup bug. I mean, you have the .com era where e-commerce just exploded in the 90s, and I think in the 2000s you really saw software, especially web-based software. I should have qualified that, but web-based software that was accessible to anyone to download or use online, or fast forward to the late 2000s in the palm of your hand with a phone in 2007 when the iPhone came out. I just got this passion for, wow, you can enable and empower people to create and do tasks that were previously either impossible to do or expensive to do, fill in the blank, but technology solved that gap. And so the transition from hardware to software, which is still something that we're in now as people are still trying to innovate the hardware side, but really software is the innovative side, or more fastly progressing right now. I got this bug like, hey, I want to be able to utilize these platforms, apps, softwares, fill in the blank, to make someone's life better. And that's really the bug that I got because I saw the potential with it in that first dorm room startup, and I kept going after it.
And on that topic, that's where you said something that I also thought was key about digitizing but not innovating. You're drawing a distinction there that I would love for you to expound upon.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening, and I'm glad that you are enjoying what you are hearing thus far. But here's one of the things that's really important. One of the most important things that you can do is get started. One of the things that I've said before, and I say again, once you get started, stay started. But more importantly, there can be lots of roadblocks to getting started. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove one of those roadblocks for you and make it a little bit easier. Because the thing that I don't want to stop you is thinking, do I need a local number? How about a long distance number? Or should it be 800? How on earth am I going to make that happen so that people can contact me as I'm out there building my business, making my cash flow grow? But most importantly, understanding that it doesn't have to be difficult. Many of you may know, but if you don't, There's a company out there by the name of Grasshopper. And what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygrasshopper.com/CashFlowDiary. Grasshopper is the entrepreneur's phone system. It works like a traditional phone system, but requires no hardware to purchase, no software to install. It's just a number that flat works. So if you are out there building that distributed workforce across many different locations, it's a way for you to still go out there and make your number be unified, simple, easy to use, something we've been using for quite some time. So again, go over to trygrasshopper.com/CashFlowDiary. Now, let's get back to the rest of the story.
Yeah, I think this is something I've only learned recently. And I would say my first startup was that dorm room startup I mentioned was on the border of innovation versus digitization. And I think it was straddling the line. But what I learned is that it's relatively easy, especially with all the tools out there today, to create a process online or in an app that streamlines something, which is great. That's a step forward. You're one step closer than you were yesterday. You're eliminating paper, extra processes, streamlined communication. Fantastic. But the line that I'm seeing drawn, and that now I'm always trying to be on the other side of, is this innovation line. Digitization is rather simple and not that complex. Now, anyone who does it, my hat's off to them. But
right? I think somebody just like that stopped all the hate emails coming your way right there.
Yeah.
I was like, uh-oh.
Hey, I've done it. I've tried to make things things more smooth. So I'm totally okay with digitization. It's a step forward. But innovation is this new line of thinking that I've personally been challenged to do because it stretches me in a way I haven't been stretched before. But it's saying, okay, I've made something more streamlined because it's online or an app or whatever. But innovation is saying, what other artificial intelligence or machine learning, or what thing can I do to catapult that forward? It's like Steve Jobs and the iPhone. Phones had been, just improved on incrementally until he came out with the internet in the palm of your hand. Music is now by song, not by album. I mean, people don't realize how many things happened when the iPhone came out. Texting became a feature that was actually sold. Before, some people had unlimited texting plans but never used it because it was too cumbersome. Like all of these things, just with one major innovation. And so that's kind of the thought. How can you totally disrupt an industry and take it one step further than doing what's always been done, and doing what's always been done times like infinity?
Okay, got it. So then let me play devil's advocate for a moment and lay down this challenge. When it comes down to it, though, when I look at sites like eBay. eBay's been around since 1995, and ultimately what they do is they match the buyer with the seller, and they get the right price, etc. All of those types of things kind of come together. How would you say that what you guys are doing at Boon is different than what eBay did back in 95?
Yeah, I think, and again, no knock on eBay. That's an extremely successful company that stood the test of time, and they've had a lot of hard things come at them, and they've been able to persevere. So props to them. But you look at eBay, it's a traditional auction or digital garage sale. It's what's always been done. And again, nothing wrong with that, because look at they're making billions and doing fine. But you look at an Amazon and they said, hey, we're going to sell books, but we're not just going to sell books. We're going to give anyone the ability to create their own virtual warehouse and virtual storefront. And we're going to help revolutionize the way online sales happen by having it come in 2 days or less. And they transformed the retail industry. I mean, it started with books and CDs and movies, but they disrupted the entire retail industry by saying, hey, we want anyone to be a retail owner, and they don't have to leave their house. And yet they can have thousands of customers or tens of thousands of customers from around the globe. And so that's kind of the difference. Now, both are digital versions of what's been done traditional. I would say Amazon's slightly more innovative in kind of their approach, and really trying to break down the doors and open up new possibilities that just previously didn't exist. And that's where Boon comes in. I mean, Boon, traditional staffing temp agencies, there's 20,000 of them in the United States alone. And 1 in every 10 healthcare providers every day is temporary. So if you go into a hospital and see 10 people, chances are one of those healthcare providers is actually not a full-time employee of that location. And what Boon's doing is saying, hey, there's some major issues that happen in the traditional model. First of all, it takes a long time. Second, It costs a lot of money. Third, people aren't getting paid fairly or getting access to benefits. Fourth, patient care with temporary workers is not always forefront. Sometimes it's just getting the work done, and Boone's really focused on that. And then five, you have this pool of people needing services and this other pool of people giving services, but they're not always matched well, meaning they just put a warm body in a warm seat or in a cold seat. And so what Boone's doing is they're using these personality indicators to make a perfect match to the best of our ability, so that when someone gets matched, they work well with the team that's already established and that's already there, which ultimately leads to better patient care. We're lowering the cost because technology is doing some of the things so that a practice doesn't have to make a decision whether or not they're going to have that extra nurse on staff that day. We're paying the nurses and providers and dentists and hygienists more fairly so that they have the freedom and flexibility to work when and where they want. I mean, burnout's on the rise. There's going to be a 2.2 million healthcare provider shortage by 2025, according to CNN, an article they just published. 2.2 million people that we need to care for our aging population. And people aren't going into it because it's not flexible. It's hard work. They have to work 12 to 16-hour shifts instead of maybe 6 to 8. That would make them provide better care. So Boone takes all of that into effect, bundles it up to one click of a button from a practice requesting a provider and one click of a button from the provider saying, yes, I'll work that shift. It takes less than 30 seconds for the transaction. It's never been done that fast. It's never been matched so well, and the finances have never been so beneficial to every party.
Awesome. Now, there's something that I don't want to skip over, though. Because I've looked at this very specifically, the idea of developing software is expensive. There is no other word for it. Yeah. Okay. So, where does someone get that kind of capital? How on earth did that even occur to you to go? Because I've seen a lot of people go. Many entrepreneurs, in fact, they have a great idea, and then they go, but where am I going to get the money? And then that's as far as the idea goes.
Yeah.
What was different about this idea that gave you the confidence to go out there and start looking?
Yeah, absolutely. I've done startups with just about every type of funding that you can do. I have self-funded. I've risked the engagement ring money I'd saved for my wife on a startup, made it all back and doubled it in 3 months. So I'm okay with that. But they're not all that successful, by the way. So I've done that. I've gone to banks and gotten loans. I've done SBA loans. I've done venture capital money. I've done angel money. You name it, I've probably tried it or helped someone try it. And I think there's a couple important things to remember when you go to funding. First of all, it is more exhausting than probably anything you'll do in your company. It is hard. Rejection is high. The questions that these people ask, especially once you get to dealing with some of the bigger venture capital, is really difficult and can be really intimidating. And, so it's a tough thing, but I think anyone has the capability to raise money if they put their mind to it and are willing to get rejected probably 999 times before they get the one yes. And so with Boon, I had tried all these different types of funding before, not with Boon, but with other startups. I've been a part of raises about 50 million in total in my career from some of those different avenues. And so I was really trying to say, okay, what avenue have I not explored that would work well for Boon? And at Boon, our slogan is it's practicing good. It's this idea of in everything that we do, are we practicing good? So even when we're at lunch as a team, this happened today right before we hopped on this. Someone grabbed the door for someone else and said, "Oh, I'm just practicing good." But it's part of our DNA. It's part of our culture. And one of the things that we're trying to do is equal opportunities. And equity crowdfunding in 2016 first became legal when the Jobs Act was passed. And what it did was it allowed not just the top 1% to invest in startups, but it allowed the 99% to invest in startups. Because before 2016, if you're not an accredited investor, meaning you basically have $1 million of liquid net worth, not including your home, or you made several $100,000 a year for several years consecutively, which is about 1% to 2% of America, you couldn't invest in a startup. And what's unfortunate is the wealthy kept getting more wealthy. So you look at someone who invested $50 in Uber when they first started. When they IPO'd, that was worth $1.2 million. $50, $1.2 million several years later. And no one that wasn't an accredited investor could have even had the opportunity to do that. And the returns, when you're getting thousands of times returns, is unreal. But there's startups every day with those opportunities and those odds. And so the Jobs Act allowed anyone to invest in startups for as little as $100, actually. And so with Boon, we chose to go with WeFunder. It's real investing. You're actually investing in the company like you could essentially on the stock market, but it's not publicly traded. And you can now put your money into a startup and watch that startup grow over time. There's some risks to it because it's not liquid, it's not publicly traded. You can't get out of it till the company has an exit event, etc. But now anyone has that opportunity. So we did go with WeFunder for Boon, and it's been a great learning experience for me, and it's been really fun to be able to bring people in that normally wouldn't have had the opportunity to invest in a company that's exciting like this at this stage. So it's just been really neat.
So in my experience, again, I've never done crowdfunding. We've acquired capital in many different ways. One of the challenges has always been just maintaining investor relations over time, because that ends up becoming a full-time job in and of itself. How is that different for you guys now that you're using WeFunder?
Yeah, so it's very different. I mean, when you get like a $10 million check for a Series A or B, you're talking about one VC firm that represents, hundreds of investors, but you're talking about one person that you have to talk to, or maybe two VCs come and syndicate or whatever it might be. When you're talking about WeFunder or any of the other equity crowdfunding sites, you're talking about hundreds or even potentially thousands of people, each putting just a little bit of money into your business that now feel like they have a say. And so you definitely, there's so much beauty from having it crowdsourced like this, even though they're owners and not just throwing their money away, they're actually, shareholders. The value is you have now 100 or 1,000 or 2,000 people with different perspectives that you don't have. And so there can be a whole lot of value in having all of those different investors. They might have more connections than you could have. So those are some of the benefits. I would say in my experience, very few investors actually reach out. They watch the video, they read the research, they go through the financials, and once they do that, they're satisfied and they're going to put in to them an insignificant amount of money so that they can kind of sit back and forget about their investment. So I've only really had a couple investors reach out, and the ones that have been very helpful in opening new doors and opening new possibilities for me. So I think the investor management is not nearly as hard as a lot of people think it is.
Interesting. Got it. So now, as you've continued to go and to continue to grow, what are the next steps of innovation that Boon has in front of it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of innovation, and we're constantly working on new products and seeing new ways to solve different problems. And I think one of the biggest ways we can innovate is taking Boon to other verticals and industries. I mean, we've had a lot of people trying to do what we've already accomplished. And some people have spent years trying to do what we've done in a different industry and said, hey, can we partner with you, use your technology that's been so innovative and effective at these matches, and join forces? And so that's kind of a new chapter with Boon, is saying, hey, how can we take what we've done to practice good and expand that to just about any industry that's willing to have it? And so it's not us trying to come and conquer all these different industries, but partner with people who are seasoned in the space to kind of help expand and extend their reach and be more effective and more efficient.
But okay, so, and I guess part of the thing that I question, I just don't know what I don't know, is the individuals that are working because of things like the way the labor unions work, employment law, etc. I can see you've obviously figured it out, and it just seems like that would be complicated in some way, shape, or form when we start talking about, benefits and am I an employee and what about workers' compensation and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of conversations that I've had, across the country, speaking on, CBS, NBC, ABC, on that very question. And a lot of it surrounded California's new bill that passed, AB 5, and will take effect on January 1st, 2020. And the conversation is, are they employees? Are they contractors? Are they getting paid fairly? Are there benefits and all of that? And I think what Boon's tried to do is we're just trying to solve a niche. And we're allowing people to come to us that want a different type of work. If someone wants to be part of a union, we might not be the best fit for them. So we are catering towards a niche, but we have prided ourselves and kind of predicated our platform on fair pay, access to benefits. So we are one of the few gig economy platforms that actually offers access to benefits for people. And the way we do that is a long, complicated conversation, but we do give them that opportunity. We give people volunteer time off. So imagine if you were an Uber driver and you drove a certain number of hours a year, you then got paid to volunteer. That's something we do. And no other gig platform does that. So we do, and those are just two of many things that we do to practice good differently. And we're not perfect, and we're still learning, and we're still trying to be the best for the people that we can be. But at the end of the day, healthcare providers got into healthcare to care for people. And so Boon got into the business of caring for people too. We just want to care for the providers and practice as well.
I like it. For those that have listened this far and want to find out more about what you guys got going on, what's going to be the best way for them to catch up with you?
Yeah, to learn more about Boon, you can go to www.doingboon.com, or you can catch up with me, see where I've been, where I'm going, where I'm speaking at www.ryanvet.com.
Excellent. Now, as we wind down, I've got a question for you because I'm kind of curious to hear your answer. There's a number of individuals who have listened today, and like myself, maybe they've raised capital before, or maybe they haven't, or maybe they had an idea and didn't take action on it yet, or maybe they have, or at any stretch of the imagination, they're ready to take that next step. They're at what I like to call that precipice of decision. And oftentimes, as humans, when we get to that point, we have a companion. And that companion comes in the form of a voice, and it's a voice that reminds us. It says, you're going to do what? And you're going to raise capital from who? No one's going to give you anyway. What on earth are you thinking? Why on earth are you calling Target to try to get them to buy your product? I mean, it's that voice. It's there for a lot of people. And for some people, they're related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. This time, it's going to be different. This time, they're going to follow through, and in fact, they're going to do exactly what you suggest. And they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I have seen work in successful people's lives, because being an entrepreneur, being a leader in a business space is extremely lonely. You have to make decisions, and those decisions are often isolating. Not everyone's going to be your fan at the end of the day, but you have to make them in the best faith that you can, that you're doing something to benefit others. So the advice that I have is always surround yourself with 3 people. And the first one is what I call a forerunner. It's the person who runs ahead of you, who's already been there, who's tripped, who's fallen, and can point out those potholes so you don't make the same mistakes. It saves you a lot of paying what I call stupid tax. You use someone else's learnings to help benefit you. The second person I say surround yourself with is your running mate, that companion, the person you can jump with. So when you're standing at that cusp saying, do I take this jump or not? You have someone there that's holding your hand and jumping with you, because there will be a lot of naysayers. And you do need those in your life too, because they keep you grounded. Anyone that tells you no, you just can't write off, because there's probably some truth in that. I would say it's not all true, but there's probably some truth. So it's always good to listen to all sides and just glean what you find most important. And then finally, I call the last people are the people that are a few steps behind you. So when you turn around and look who's coming up at the path behind you, who are those people that you can pour into and share what you've learned? Because I would almost guarantee if you have a mentor and you have a running mate, that's great. But if you have someone you're mentoring or pouring into, even if you're not that old, even if you don't have all that much experience, when you start sharing what you're doing, you start synthesizing it in a different way, and you're able to make your own advice actionable. So often when you're mentoring someone else or sharing those stories, you become far more insightful on your own journey. And so those are the 3 people that I think everyone should have around them. And if 2 out of 3 people say yes, jump, do it.
I like it 100%. I definitely appreciate the variety of things that you've had exposure to, the creativity that you have brought to being an entrepreneur and making things happen. And I definitely thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, and your insight here with us today at the CashFlowDiary, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. I appreciate it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean? Well, obviously, that means go look this up, because at the end of the day, you know that you heard something that was unique. And you probably have a unique idea too. And one of the things that I know to be true is that watching other people, seeing what others have done, how they have brought many different creative things together to formulate what I'm looking at today, there's always a lesson or two to learn from behind the scenes. At any rate, you guys, you've been here this far. Go one more step further. Make that idea happen today, because, well, it's your time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.